Hi, everyone. Welcome to LASBA podcast. I'm sitting here today with Trenton Mueller, a church planter here in LA. We're going to be talking about church planting and a few other things, but I just want to remind you about these podcasts. If you hit like and subscribe so you get our content, so we can build up our base there. We have a backlog of a lot of things that we'd like to show you. And so, but that being said, let's just get right into it. Trenton, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Good, thank you. You are the senior pastor of Abiding Church in LA.
Yep.
You're a church planter.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about your background. How'd you get to LA?
Yeah, so I've been told I went the wrong direction, although I don't think I did. I think I followed the Lord, but I'm Tennessee native, so born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then I moved to Nashville for college and was in the music industry and was a worship leader. And I don't know, somewhere around 27 years old, the Lord just revealed to me that I was doing church things but wasn't really following his will for my life. And so I was like in this weird position where I was mostly a hearer of the word and not a doer, obeyer, disciple of Jesus. And the Lord had already been working on my wife in that vein. She had been telling me for like 2 years at the time, like, I think we're going to leave Nashville. And I was like, no way, this is home. We'll live here for forever. But the Lord in his kindness and mercy, just revealed that everything I was doing in Nashville, other than my Sunday morning slot of leading worship, was really about what I could build for me. And so the Lord convicted me, and in his mercy, invited us to offer our whole life to him for real, not just a Sunday kind of life, but the whole thing. Romans 12:1 and 2 kind of, offer your whole body as living sacrifice type of thing. And so I'll never forget, me and my wife were sitting at our dinner table, and she had been there for about 2 years of, I think we'll leave. And I remember being like, all right, well, Lord, we would go if you would. We didn't know for sure we would leave, but we're like, Lord, if you would send us, we would go anywhere you would send us. So our initial thought was IMB, but it was about a week after that moment that me and my wife were praying at a table and opening our hands to the Lord that I got a call from a church planter saying, I want you to move to Los Angeles area with me and help me plant the church. And I was like, what? I'd never even visited LA before. And so that was 7 years ago. And I said no to him. And then he asked me again. I said no. Then the third time he got smart and he invited me on a trip out here to LA. And so it was through visiting and just seeing the need and soaking in the city that the Lord just spoke really clearly that this was our next assignment. And so that day, our last day of that 5-day trip, we stood at Griffith Observatory, looked at LA, and the Lord said, go serve the city. And so that's part of my calling is the Lord telling me to serve the city, which I think we'll get more to that later. But we said yes. So the next day we had no job, no money. I mean, it was just an idea, like come plant a church in LA. And we just put our yes on the table for real with nothing to stand on. And then by God's grace, step after step, he provided, and we've lived out here. It'll be 6 years this summer total that we've lived here. So we love LA.
When did you actually plant the church?
So I first moved out and planted a church in Anaheim with him through Send Network. We were a part of the Orange County Baptist Association, so we love Pastor Victor down there. But we planted in Anaheim, and I did 3 years there with him. And then I did a year residency after I left that church, a year church planting residency with Send Network. And then we launched after that residency was over. So we launched a little over a year and a half ago, September 2023. I think it was the last Sunday or in September. And so we'll be 2 years old as a church in September this year. So
you're still crawling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're running. So how's the church plant going? Let me ask this. Is the church plant and being a church planter what you thought it would be?
Not at all. No. Not at all. My background was in larger Southern Baptist churches in the Nashville and Chattanooga area. So I was used to the, a 20 staff church was a small church in, kind of my background. And so the last church I was at had 20 creative staff.
Yeah.
So it's just large churches. And so to go from that to moving into LA without knowing a soul, really, with a small core team of 5 people, and then me and my wife, it's just different. It's like I moved here with a missionary mindset of let's go into the city, let's meet people, let's win them to Christ, let's disciple them, and let's start a church from that. And that's what we've done. And it's been a slow work, but it's been a wonderful work.
So how was the transition? I've been to Tennessee. I love Tennessee. I love that area. But you can go to the end of town in a lot of those cities, and then you're in the country and then go to another town. Is it overwhelming to come to Southern California and just see nothing but pavement?
Yeah. Yeah, in some regards, yes. It's kind of shocking, but I also just loved it. So on that first trip when we visited, I was like, I like this. I like fast pace. I love the hustle and bustle of a city. And I love preaching the gospel to a city that thinks what you can gain is your worth. And then we learn that Christ is our worth. And so I love it here. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So were you raised in the church?
I was. I grew up in a church in Tennessee called Woodland Park Baptist Church. And that's where I met my wife. And born and raised Southern Baptist.
Oh. So if you could say one thing to someone right now that's watching this, that's thinking about being a church planter, or they have just an inkling or whatever it might be, what would you say to them?
I would say do it out of a calling, not out of function.
Okay, good.
So church planting is very hard, especially in a city like ours. And if you're doing it out of function, out of, I don't want to be a youth pastor, or I don't like my pastor, I'm better than him, and it feels like a good next step where you can bypass hard circumstances. To me, most of the time, as I learned the church planters here, even beyond our denomination, I'm meeting a lot of the church planters. The ones that quit are the ones that planted out of function, not out of calling. Now, if God is stirring your heart and calling you, then he'll equip you for every good work, and he'll give you the endurance you need and the grit you need to do the work he's laid before you. So if it's about career and function, beware. But if the Lord calls you, then go, do it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've always found that if you're called, it's must do. You must do it. And God just calls you to it, and you have to do it. You can't run and get away from it.
Yeah.
And so being a church planter years ago, I found out it's a different breed of cat than just being a senior pastor of a church. And
very different.
Everything is different. And so you have to be prepared for that. So, but praise God for our church planters and people like yourself that are willing to follow God's call and go to a different area, and do that. I mean, how would we preach the gospel around the world if we didn't have people that were willing to, leave the comfort zone?
Yeah.
And I always think, I've always had it easy. My ministry has always been roughly in Southern California. And I hear the stories of others and I'm saying, wow, that's, when you talk about a leap of faith or a step of faith, that really challenges you. But I think you would agree God will meet you.
Yeah.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit. And we've been going through a rough season here in LA in January, February, with all the fires and the devastation. And I don't think people that don't live here, even people that live here that haven't even driven by there, don't understand the magnitude of the devastation. And I know your church is very close to where there was a lot of fires. So when all the fires started happening and you're close to it, what did that trigger in you, or what happened?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For us, it hit close to home. So not just locationally, but a family in our church, Chris and Lauren Fortinall, who are dear friends, some of our best friends here in the city. Chris teaches at our church. Chris is it's just an amazing family of 2 little girls, and a 3 and a 1-year-old. And their house was how I heard. Like, we knew that fires were going on, but we didn't know they were in the city yet.
Okay.
Until Chris called me, because me and my wife were visiting a grandmother in Albuquerque. So the first 2 days of the fire, me and my wife were not in town. So I knew there was fires, but I saw on the news. I was looking at X some, but Twitter, but then we get a call from Lauren, and she says our house is burnt down. And then it was like, okay. So as a local pastor, I'm like, how do we help them? Like, what do they need? And then just as we were, after we got that call, unfortunately, it was kind of hard for me to enjoy the trip I was on. And so we just began to call and text everyone we knew in the area and figure out who was displaced, who was suffering, whose house had burned down. I was calling other pastors that I've met in the area. And I just knew as we were driving back from Albuquerque that, like, okay, we've got to jump all in on this. Like, this is, I don't want to be the church that's known for, amazing sermons only because I'm studying 30 hours a week while my city has burnt to the ground. Yes. I'm like, there has to be this push and pull. I'm not saying to not study. I'm just saying, like, I don't want to be the pastor who's sitting in his office when there's suffering right outside his front door. Right. And so as we were driving back, we were calling and basically putting together our game plan for how we would initially respond. But yeah, that's what got it started. It was so close to home. Like, our church has a sweet family that unfortunately their home's no more. So that's what started it all.
Okay, I know you mentally grappled with it, but how did you grapple with it spiritually and internally? How did you feel when you heard this and you saw it? What was going on the inside of you?
I think I more went to like fight mode. Okay. Like, I was devastated. I mean, like, I cried a lot, like, as we were driving back. And I'm like, don't want to see our city suffer. But then I instantly, in Christ and through his word, I'm like, Lord, what are you going to do from the ashes? Like, we already know that somehow in his infinite wisdom and power and goodness, that he can take the worst things we can think of and make them into something amazing, and bring salvation and bring healing. So I basically was able to get out my low emotions on our drive back from Albuquerque. Okay. And when we hit the ground, it was like, we just have to serve. Like, I don't want to flee the city because I'm scared of the smoke. I don't want to, I want to find where people are and serve them. But emotionally, I just think it was kind of a speed bump, like, sure. I pushed through it, and that's how it started with that.
Okay. So you made these phone calls and tried to rally. So was that the starting point? So in other words, if you were going to explain how to begin disaster relief, what are the first steps?
Yeah. To throw yourself in the deep end. Okay. Yeah. So it's to not just go.
Say that again.
Yeah. It's to throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah. Because if I'm not committed, if you're not committed, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so we could have, and I don't even think it would have been sinful of us. We could have said, our family suffered, Chris and Lauren, we're just going to help them. Yeah. But that's not, to me, the heart of the Great Commission. That's, to me, it's not the heart of Jesus. And there's clearly a lot of scriptural precedent for loving on those who are hurting, who are needy, who are weary. And so when we jumped, what I mean by jump in the deep end is we immediately started to connect with the relationships that were already being built before the disaster of community leaders, teachers in the school district, other pastors. And so I'm calling pastors going, what are you going to do? We'll either help you or or help us. Like, let's sync our efforts and do max good for our city. Like, this isn't a moment about our church brand or your church brand. This is like, let's lock arms as churches. We even locked arms beyond our denomination. And I'm proud of that. Not like, We didn't lock arms theologically, but we locked arms to serve a broken and hurting city, you know?
Sure.
So it was making all those calls. And then by the time we were back, what we realized is where the Eaton fire is, our church is about 18 minutes below it. And above it is mountain. And then you can kind of go towards Santa Clarita. But most of those people were displaced south.
Sure.
So many of them were even closer to us. So jumping in the deep end looked like having tractor trailers full of supplies pull up to our sanctuary. Biting the bullets were church plants. We had to, you know, pay rent on a building beyond what our budget would normally allow. So by faith, stepping into more expenses, by faith, telling tractor trailers to show up and that we'll figure out how to get their supplies to our city. And so we had Penske trucks and truck beds and people bringing our church supplies. So those first 14 days, we were a distribution hub to respond to the fire, which I might be jumping ahead, but that was, I'm just saying that right now to say that was what jumping in the deep end looked like. Wasn't going like, well, we'll wait and see how we could possibly help. As soon as I realized people's homes are gone and they have nothing, they don't even have water, they don't have a place to stay, they don't have any food. Many of them, their wallets were like they don't have credit. Like it was just, as soon as I realized it was that tragic of a moment, we were like, well, let's turn our church into a spot where you can come in and get food and some clothes and some water and hygiene and toiletries and shampoo and toys. And so that's what we did right there at the beginning of all the fires in January. And that was like jumping in the deep end, because that's not, I mean, I'm a church planner, not a disaster relief organizational leader.
Right, yeah.
But we couldn't sit on the sidelines, and I wasn't going to wait 10 weeks to figure out how to help. I was like, let's just help as many people as we can. So, I mean, there's 50, 60 families in the first 2 days of us doing that that came through who had lost everything. We're getting their names and numbers and addresses, and we'll follow up with you. And it was really special. The first few weeks were really special in a ministry sense, because God just opened such incredible doors for us to love and share the gospel. Like I got to share the gospel with a witch who came into our church building, and she was like, "There's such a good spirit about you guys." And I'm like, "That's the Holy Spirit. That's God's presence. That's the living God. The only way, the only way to heaven is through the Holy Spirit, like through Jesus and the Spirit and through the Father. Like this is God you're sensing." And she was like, "That's so interesting. I'll have to look more into the, we're just preaching the gospel and hugging people and crying with people and praying with people." And that's what I mean by jumping in the deep end, is we could have waited. We could have been like, let's see how this plays out. Let's see what the needs really are. But we set up shop on faith that we knew that there was needs. We had some known, maybe 10 or 15 families we knew would probably come to us, but I mean, there's hundreds that rolled through in those 14 days of households. And then they would tell their neighbors, and so we filled our building, and then it depleted, and we filled it again, and it depleted 3 times. We stocked and restocked our resources and moved them all. And that was a really rewarding moment.
Yeah. So when you cast your net out there for supplies and stuff, you weren't going to just people that were Christian. You were going to just people that had resources. You were just saying how God's going to respond to this need?
I was open. I was very excited about serving with unbelievers who weren't affected by the fires, but just wanted to do some good. Because that is also one of the easiest gospel conversations. I mean, the amount of times I've said to volunteers who served with us the past 8 weeks, like, Jesus compels us to behave like Jesus has compelled us to serve our city like this. That's why we're doing it. Why are you doing it? And then I make them think about it. And then, so many of those have turned into amazing, like, gospel, repentance, faith conversations. But we put out our net, our invite to anyone who wanted to help. Now, many churches stepped up really well. We got supplies from many unbelievers. We got businesses would just pull up, and here's 2 pallets of stuff like that. So we didn't stop anyone from helping in the moment.
So once you begin to get this stuff, then you needed volunteers, right, to help. How'd you do that? Was it just people from your church? Or?
It was people from it was about probably 60-40. So about 60% were people from our church. 40 were just volunteers who really wanted to serve in the city. And so we had them in, and we would do prayer at the beginning, and I'd put the gospel in every prayer. I would put the gospel prayer at the end of the day. Like if you came and served with it, one of the guys, I obviously won't say his name, but who came and served with us was a rapper who I met when I very first moved to LA, and his music is very vulgar. It would make most churches blush. And he's serving in our room. He's like, I love what you guys are doing, and I'm praying and preaching the gospel over the room, and victims are coming in. He's hearing me speak the gospel, and I'm like, I love that he wanted to serve, to be a good person, but he served with and through the church. And we're not good people. We're saved people. We're sanctified people. It is the goodness of God flowing through us to our city. And I believe he got to witness it that day. So there's so many moments like that I loved as well.
Yeah, so it was an opportunity for the church to be the church. You know, and because I find so many times that churches kind of just operate independently, and they don't really resource well, or they don't reach out well, or they kind of look to see who's doing what, but they don't necessarily jump in. And I think that, you know, we're planted in communities for a reason, you know, and to serve that community in whatever capacity, and the gospel message will come through one way or the other in that serving. And so with these volunteers, now I'm sure you probably had people that were displaced, or people that needed food, or whatever. Did you develop teams or structure, or what?
So when we were a distribution site for those first 14 days, we had a delivery teams, and then we had about 4 people on site. And so say we had 20 volunteers, which many days we did have 20 or more. We would get delivery teams, and then we had a phone team. So we had 2 or 3 people making phone calls. I was on that team, listening to victims. Where are you at? Can you come to us? And they'd be like, no, we can't. One of our cars burnt down. Our husband's at work. Like, because work went on. These families are trying to, unless their business burnt down, many of these people had to go back to work so they can keep their family afloat. And then they would have one car because many vehicles burnt down. So then we'd hear of one of the families was a mom with I think it was 8 or 9 kids in a hotel room of like high school to young kid. And so we took them a truckload of I took that call, and then we loaded up a whole truck bed of every toys and toiletries and like everything we could do. And we ended up taking them like several different distribution over that time. And so we had basically a phone team, a team to run our room and our distribution, and then a delivery team. So families would come in, and there's of the people run our room. Some would pray for them, and some would show them around. And so that's kind of the 3 teams that we had. We had a creative team too for a couple of the days, but mostly it was those 3. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I remember early on you had called me, and I talked on the phone a little bit, because we were actually going to do this podcast a lot earlier, but all these other things came. But I remember I talked to you one day, and then the next day you sent me a picture, and you're in this hazmat outfit from head to toe, and oxygen or whatever is going on. Tell me a little bit about what it was like to take families back to the site of a home that's been destroyed by fire.
Yeah, so I would say we've taken maybe 2 families total back. But my heart was to be present in the city. So it's not that we had a really good function of taking families back as much as I would just, after we closed down our distribution and families were going back to their properties, I made it a point to drive Altadena almost every day. I mean, maybe I missed 2 days, maybe. But I would drive it, and I would see people stand on our property, and I would park my car, and I would get out, and I would go talk to them. And sometimes I was able to pray. Sometimes I was able to share the gospel. But at minimum, I was able to say, we would love to help you sift through your home to find anything that you might need. And we were we were outfitted with some supplies from another nonprofit. And so we had Tyvek suits and the gear to do it. And so I was able to go up to families. It's not that I like took them back to their property as much as sometimes I'd walk up and everyone's crying. And it's like, this is like sharing, it's like kind of like sharing the gospel. Like sharing the gospel can feel weird. You're like, I probably shouldn't do, like, there's a tension always with when you're flesh and spirit of, are you going to give into the weakness of your flesh, or are you going to walk in the power of the Spirit? So sometimes I'd be walking up these homes like, they're not going to want to talk with me. And then 4 hours later, I know their life story and have shared the gospel 6 times. But that was because I decided to not sit in my office and to be present in the city. And so we've done 18 homes now, what's called an ash out. And we have, I think, 12 more on our calendar, but I got 2 texts today about 2 more homes. So they're still coming in slowly, but all an ash out is you put on the right protective gear, and you get on the property and you look for anything that might have not burned, which mostly it's like high coated ceramics. Like if they're have epoxy on them or something, many of that made it, and then it's precious metals, so gold and silver. But yeah, so that's just what we decided to do, is drive the city, be present. Even to this day, I'm still drive the city every day. And I'm like, Lord, is there an opportunity? And I'll get out if I see a family. So yesterday we were doing an ash out on a home looking for a jade ring for Miss Nira Chow. She's a wonderful lady, God-fearing woman. And her neighbors pulled up and walked up onto their property. But then a parent left, and there was just a son. He looked around my age, and I walked up there to him to ask him how we could serve him. And he was crying, and it was his first time on the property. So that's his childhood home. He had not been back. And we're 7-8 weeks out from when we're a far way out from when the fires happened. And it was his first time seeing it. And every part of my flesh was like, don't bother him. Like but the spirit was going, go up there and talk to him. So we went up and talked to him. And what was so cool is Miss Nira, who was the victim, who we were sifting her home, shared the gospel with him. I didn't even have to. I'm just sitting here watching it. I wanted to be like, I want to pull out my phone and take a picture to remember it, but I didn't. But I'm like, man, the Lord will redeem this moment. And the Lord is clearly works so well through tragedies. I mean, it's in tragedies that all of our barriers come down, and then the gospel can come in so swiftly. And so, that's one of the ways that we were able to help all these families ash out. Is I guess the main point I'm trying to make is we didn't sit in our church building. We drove the streets every day, sometimes with multiple cars, volunteering, getting out, getting people's numbers and names, saying, we want to serve you. Many of them are like, well, how much do you charge? And it's so cool to be like, no, we're just a church. You don't have to pay us anything. We just want to serve you. So that was been a really rewarding part of this. And we're still in that mode a little bit. So we have, several more ash outs to do, I imagine, for another month or so.
Really? Yeah. Wow. So in the resources, a lot of things that are given to you, but I'm sure you probably need to raise money as well, right? And so how are you doing that?
This is one of those moments where I'm just super proud to be a part of LASBA. I'm proud to be a part of California Southern Baptist Convention, and I'm proud to be a part of Southern Baptist Convention as a whole, because many people sought us out. So as we were telling the story, because we were trying to tell the story not for pride, but just like, look, we need help. And our church has $3, in our bank account. Not really, I'm being hyperbolic, but our church is a church plant. We don't have endless resources, and so it was so awesome to get calls from you. It was so awesome to get calls from Victor, Charis Risabon, Orange County, and from other church plants, even a part of our network here in Southern California and Denver and Vegas. And I mean, just many churches, the Big C Church, called and said, how can we help? And then I was able to outline the ways that people could help, how we would use the funds. And we just committed that all of our funds to, I think this was helpful. We decided not to keep a penny. So we're not going to buff up our church budget while we're fundraising for fires.
Dollar in, dollar out.
Yeah. That's what we committed. And so every dollar we have, we're giving it towards victims or towards supplies for them, like that they've requested. So, a special needs, a mom with a son with special needs requested an iPad this week. Well, by God's grace, we're able to buy her son an iPad. So we're meeting needs and giving all that resourcing directly to families who need it the most while sharing the gospel. Like we're not soft with the gospel in this moment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a hammer and I see 100 nails and we're swinging because people don't just need an iPad. I don't just want to be the iPad guy.
Right.
I'm the guy who wants to see people go from death to life, just like all of us pastors. But it's a unique opportunity where typically you'd have to search in a haystack looking for the nail. Like, where's the nail, Lord? It's hard to share the gospel in LA. And now it's like all the hay's it's gone. It's just the opportunities are there if we will be in public with boldness to share the gospel. So I don't even remember what your question was, but I'm sure it was a great one.
What I got so excited about the ministry that you're doing, or those that are doing it, and this is my personal opinion, is that I think over the years the church has kind of lost its way. In a lot of times we're talking about, well, where is God moving? Is God moving? And obviously you're seeing God move here. And you have to go where God is moving and what's going on. You have to be there. And a lot of times we just kind of wait for it to come to us. And we're called to go. He calls us to the cross, but then he sends us from the cross. And what does go look like? It looks like a fire disaster. It looks like, whatever it might be, a homeless shelter or whatever, wherever your ministry is at, that's what go is. And that's what I appreciate about this. And so long term, what do you think, what is your inkling of how long this is going to go on, that we're going to be in disaster mode relief?
Yeah, I mean, it'll change phases, but I mean, if we look at Lahaina and the Maui fires and all that, like they're not even rebuilt yet. And that was, a while ago. And so our read is that this will be a 2 to 5 year commitment for us to basically continue to go find needs and meet them. And so my heart for our church plant is, and I was saying this to you earlier as we got to connect, but is not that we would be known for like the best preaching or like we like that guy better than everyone else over here, or the best band, although I love our worship team, I think they do great, or the best social media. I hope that our church is known as the church that did too much for the fires, and too much as an exaggeration, but like, I hope our church is known as for how we lay down our life, how we resourced people in their lowest moment, and how we preach the gospel boldly. I mean, we're not shying away from repentance, but our hope for the long term is, can I outline kind of our 3 things that we're doing now, just really quick, because the long term plays a role in that. So our shotgun is we still have a distribution site.
Okay.
And it's an invite-only distribution to victims that we know have lost their home. And so we verified them. We've stood on the properties with them, or we got them verified through this through the school district and through teachers who would ask the parents permission if they could share their name with the church, so that and they got written permission so we could bypass HEPA and other like privacy laws. So we have written consent to follow up with these families, is what I'm saying. So we have all these families, well over 100, and we call them every week. Every family gets a phone call, and we say, here are the supplies we have at our distribution. Do you need them? And then they roll through. And our heart there is to resource people with gift cards. So every family can get a gift card a week, and every family can get the supplies they need a week. So that's like that's a shotgun. Now we have 2 rifles, the more focused approaches. Our church is personally adopting as many families as we can. But right now we're at 10. And these are families that are close. These are families that are one person removed, and they've got a deep relationship in our church, and that person is caring for them. And then what the adopting means is we're looking to bring resources to them at a higher amount over time. So we're not just going up and taking a picture with a check going, look what we've done, and then we never talk to people again. Our heart is basically to do life with these people, help them long term again and again and again. So for instance, within the past 10 days, our church has helped the family pay a deposit on a condo. They're one of the families we've adopted. So we helped them pay a deposit, gave them a good chunk of money. Another family had their first month's rent, but couldn't afford their deposit on their apartment while they wait to rebuild. So we paid their deposit. So it's not just going up and cutting $20,000 checks to some families and calling it a day, but it's positioning ourselves to serve these families and meet their needs across time. So that's the adoption, and that's a rifle. Like, we know these people, we know their names. When we call, they answer and are excited. They're calling us and giving us prayer requests. So that's one of the rifles. The second, and the last one, which will be brief, is we have a rebuild fund specifically designated to helping those who are underinsured or uninsured get back their home. So that we have a fund for that we're raising. I mean, we would love to raise as much as possible to be able to meet the needs of these underinsured and uninsured families. So mass distribution, invite only, adopting families, and rebuilding for a few specific families.
And in that master plan, how can LASBA serve you?
I mean, there is certainly, so that's, that plan is our financial plan. So all three of those involve finances. One of the ways is with these families, of the 100 of our mass distribution, we're running deliveries to people. Like, we've driven to Temecula and to San Diego and to Lancaster. And so there are families that are displaced and out there. And so churches in LASBA could, if they have some volunteers and want to get in the game, they can meet us at our distribution site. We can equip them with some gift cards and addresses and numbers, and they can drive and help us do some deliveries. There's also ash outs, so we have needs for people who are willing to get in the burn zone and help us sift. So there's needs there. Then obviously, resourcing this work is, which, you were so generous from day one on wanting to help with that. So I honor you and LASBA for that. But keeping our gift cards stacked, we're giving out a lot. It's a significant amount of money that we're offering to these families on a weekly basis. And we just want to keep that going as long as possible. So there's resourcing needs and volunteer needs. That's how y'all can help. Yeah.
So in kind of wrapping all this up, any last kind of final thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I think that these moments for me have revealed two things about, and I'm talking broader than LASBA.
Sure.
They've revealed two things about churches in LA as I'm a young church planter looking around, wanting to learn, is we need better collaboration among churches, for sure. Churches, I don't know how we get like this, and I've been this guy before, so this isn't even casting a big stone, but to go, I care so much about serving in our city and God's kingdom activity that I will put on the shirt of another church to go serve with them is the kind of pastors I hope that we can, that I know, LASBA's got some of them, but I'm like, that's what I want as I look at our city broader than just our denomination, like the pastors, the churches here. I want to see, especially in disaster, but even beyond disaster, us going, what is a kingdom win? And it's weird that we think God will call us to humility in our personal life, but not in our church life as pastors. And so I definitely think better collaboration would be an awesome thing from this. And then I just also know that there's many pastors, probably even in LASBA, who are like, we don't know what to do. Like, we've made some calls. They're full on volunteers. They're full on volunteers. If you have talented, loving, godly people, we can figure out something for you to do. The needs are still there. There's still a lot of homes that are smoke damaged that need cleaning, for instance. Like, there's a lot of needs. If any churches in LASBA just want to adopt a family and just love on and directly resource a family, I've got hundreds. Like, I don't care who gets the credit. I don't care who gets the, I do care who gets credit. God. I want God to get the credit.
Sure, absolutely.
I don't care what church gets the credit.
Right.
I just know that this is a specific time in our city where people are hurting. And my hope is that there will be even better collaboration church to church. And let's lead the way with LASBA. Like, let's set the standard for our city of collaboration. And then I hope that people know there's still plenty of ways to serve. Yeah. And I honor you. I'm thankful for you, Steve. You're doing an excellent job. He did not pay me to say this. He did not pay me to say this. You are. You're doing an excellent job of uniting our churches and of leading this. And I'm honored to be a part and be with you.
No, we're honored to have you. And you know what? My takeaway from this conversation is that here you are, a young church planter from a different part of the country. You came over, and none of that matters. What matters is the gospel, meeting the needs of the community. And it's not personal, but it's a leadership model that I think is missing. And my hope is that out of all of this, you know, God is always there, he's always present, but that we can raise up a higher standard of involvement in our churches. And like you said, work together, partnership. You know, we don't need to be competitive. We need to be embracing of one another and share the need. The fire might not be in my backyard, you know, it might be in somebody else's, so I can go to somebody else's backyard, but then one time it might be in my backyard. And, you know, but we all work together. So I just want to challenge our LASBA churches out there that if you heard the call, you heard the desire, and if you want to give time, talent, money, whatever, you can get a hold of Trenton. You can also just call the LASBA office, and I'll set you up with Trenton that way. You won't be bogged down with some calls.
Extra
you don't
calls.
know who they are, you know, and so we can vet them for you. But if you want a resource to do anything, you know, you might want to be able to give a little bit of money. What we have is a set of money set aside just specifically for this. It's $1 in, $1 out. Everything that we receive will go to that disaster relief. You know, so if you want to help and be a part of that, give us a call, send us whatever, and just tell us it's for disaster relief, and we'll know what to do with it. But again, Trenton, I want to thank you for sharing, and hope we can sit down again and talk, because there's a lot more I would like to talk to you about in all of this. And this is a fluid situation. It's going to be going on for quite a number of years. And God's in the middle of it. So again, I want to thank you all for just watching and being a part of this. Again, hit like, hit subscribe. You don't miss any of our content. And so God bless you. And Trenton, God bless your work out there. And God bless Southern California and the United States of America as well.
Amen. Yeah.
All right. Bye.